who were using or had the right to use this weapon were going to use body cameras. So that was put in place for the first time for the last weekends. But, this debate has then continued, of course, after the incident. And this week it was actually even taken to court because French unions and also human rights organizations have asked the France's top legal advising or council to ban the use of these weapons altogether. So the question is, what is, the flashball for us who are not not everyone is familiar with this, this weapon.
Violent protest. They're also called LBDs, right? They look like huge guns.
They're supposed to be non-lethal. That's the thing. They're supposed to.
Well, nobody was killed so far by these weapons during a lot of people lost their eyes. Some
someone
fingers
claiming that
hands.
One guy would have died if he hadn't been immediately taken to hospital. So there's a debate about whether they actually are non-lethal or not.
Yeah.
So these LBD weapons, it's held in the hand, and then they fire rubber projectiles at the size of golf balls, and they are not supposed to be aimed at the head, of course, because even though they don't go through the body, well, if you get it in your eye, of course, that's going to be very, very serious. It's supposed to be aimed at lower body parts, but that has also been a debate about whether the
they're pretty big. They're like the
instructions.
size of a tennis ball almost. And then when it's shot at you from a distance from 10 meters, it can really hurt. Now, of course, the French police are known for having their own kind of strategy in fighting violence or protests in the streets, very different from other European countries. Is France the exception?
Well, yes. To answer your question, France is a little bit of an exception. It's only has the company of Greece, Poland, and Spain where these weapons are allowed. In other European states, they've been completely banned. For example, in Austria, in Ireland, Finland, Norway, Sweden, all Scandinavian countries, and in the UK. And what many are saying then, that for France to be in the company of these former
dictatorships,
exactly, is not a very flattering company.
Yeah, no, it's not very flattering indeed to be in the company of Poland, Spain, and Greece, who have a long history, of course, of fighting any protests in the country. So what's going to be done? Is it still?
It's still up in the air, and it's still being debated what will happen. Police, of course, very attached to this weapon, saying that it's a question of life and death also for the police officers themselves, and they need this weapon to not be able to control crowds or people at a distance. And and then you have this. There was even published this week a petition by doctors asking the authorities to ban these weapons because it's not a non-lethal. It's not dangerous. It's indeed a very, very dangerous weapon.
And what's interesting also is that the use of these weapons actually to fight the Yellow Vest is now turning into some kind of, PR advantage for the Yellow Vest, because there is so much violence by the police. It makes them feel stronger. And of course, the person who got hit this weekend is now turned into some kind of martyr, or it's like a symbol. And that's something of also the government really fears, that the use of all this police violence will actually reinforce the movement. So, it's a very complicated
vicious circle,
situation.
isn't that what it's called?
Vicious circle. It is. So, but this being said, this weekend again will be the 12th episode of the Yellow Vest protests. I don't know if the red scarves will be on the streets again, but at least there's now also a counter group. And of course, the government also fears that these groups will somehow be, opposed to each other in the streets. And, what will happen then? We'll see. And now, food. Or should I say mat, Sarah? Because it looks like Swedish, Danish, and Norwegian has replaced French as the new language in the kitchen. What happened?
Who would have thought? Yes, a complete Scandinavian success in French national sports gastronomy.
Mat is the word for food, right?
It is.
It is. Okay, good.
You're right.
In all those three languages, actually.
Yes, I think you write it a little bit differently. You spell it a little bit differently, but yes, mat.
Yeah. So number one, Norway. Number
2 Sweden.
So number 1 Denmark, number 2 Sweden, and 3 Norway.
Exactly.
Incredible.
Exactly. And this was all taking place in the French food capital of Lyon this week. A very famous competition is sometimes called the Olympic Games of Gastronomy, le Bocuse d'Or competition after the late and famous French chef Paul Bocuse.
I think we talked about him last year when he passed away.
When he passed away. Very famous chef. This is not a new competition in his honor. It was actually created by himself in 1987. And since then, every second year, teams from different countries or countries around the world compete against each other in creating then 2 dishes actually during a limited time. Yeah,
and how does it work? They get like a bunch of ingredients and then.
Well, they get the recipes.
Okay.
So this year's ingredients or recipe was a rack of veal, and then they're also with some vegetables, I believe. And then we're also supposed to make a vegetable chartreuse with shellfish.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if you've never had it, it's probably not that strange, because what some of the chefs were saying that this was the really, really tricky part, because no one makes chartreuse anymore in kitchens. But so these were the dishes they were supposed to make. And, top of...
Who won? Yeah,
it was the Danes who won.
Yeah.
And then, as we said, ahead of 2 other Scandinavian countries, it is not that rare. It turns out that actually that the Scandinavians have been on top or among the top countries for quite a few years now. And we also know that one of the world's best restaurants is actually in Copenhagen. It was at least for years.
Exactly, yeah.
One thing that you can though say about the competition, which I found a little bit sad when you're watching, is that there are 23 countries, teams, and only 2 female chefs.
Incredible. Yeah.
There is a long way to go there. The prize in this, do you want to know?
Yeah.
You win a golden statue that looks like Paul Bocuse.
Oh, how nice.
And the honor, of course, because that's what the winner said, that,
so sort of Oscar.
This is all about the honor.
Yeah.
But it's a big event. It drew almost 200,000 visitors to Lyon this week, with 25,000 chefs. Yeah,
it must be some kind of insult as well to the French, right? To be beaten in their own city.
Probably, but there's some interesting things going on in the way there's a change in what countries and what traditions are the most.
Yeah, so now it's Scandinavia, so we should also go to Scandinavia to have good food and not to France anymore. What's your favorite Scandinavian dish?
I love herring and I love potatoes.
Oh.
So.
Sounds easy. Herring and potatoes.
Not that complicated. Now, if food is one of our favorite topics, we have another one as well in this podcast, and that's the Eurovision Song Contest. And it's so great because it comes back every year, so we can talk about it.
And every year it's a bit different.
A little bit different, because now, this week, at least, we found out who will be representing France.
Yeah, and that was quite a surprise, and a pleasant surprise for many people. Let's have a short listen to the song that's going to Israel this year.
I am me, and I know I will always be. Je suis free, oui j'invente ma vie. Ne me demandez pas qui je suis. Moi je suis le même depuis tout petit.
Yeah, Sarah, so who's this? Who are we hearing?
Well, that was Bilal Hassani, 19 years old only. And he is, he was not very famous to me, I will admit
I didn't
this.
know him at all until last week.
But he's very, very famous to the younger generation because he's a blogger here in France. He actually started in a TV show called The Voice Kids. It's quite successful here in France a couple of years ago. And then he started his own YouTube channel where he sings covers of, both covers and his own songs. And he's talking to his fan base, which is massive.
Yeah, he has almost 1 million people following him on YouTube. And his videos are watched by like 4 million times. So he's a big star on YouTube.
He is. And so he was, he was a bit of a favorite knowing that he had this big fan base going into the competition. But he's an interesting character and a fun and fresh, I think, fresh change to what we've seen previously in the French.
Yeah, he's gay, and he's openly gay, and really uses that to it. He's very long hair. He uses makeup, so that's
he's very charismatic.
Very charismatic. So that's his looks. And of course, France the last years France doesn't do very well at the Eurovision.
2 years ago they didn't do that bad. Last year they ended up 15, I think.
Yeah,
not very big success. No. But to mention that actually it was the Monsieur Madame, which was the band or the group or the duo that wrote last year's song, they actually co-wrote Bilal's song as well. So, there's a sort of a link between last year and this year.
Yeah.
This year it's a mix, a little bit of English and a little bit of French.
Yeah.
Would that work?
Yeah,
as a Eurovision specialist, Stefan, do you think this will make it all the way to the top?
Well, it sounds very Eurovision, so it may have a chance. And indeed, he sings in English and in French. He mixes it, and he's really perfect, I think, for the Eurovision Song Festival.
His character is very much a perfect fit.
But the final is at the half of May, something like the 18th of May, I think. And I'm sure we'll talk about him.
What
again.
About so? What would be the Dutch competition this year?
It's not sure who is going. It's sure who is going. I never heard of him. But the song will be revealed in March. So because it's also a big thing in the Netherlands, like in Sweden, of course. So Bilal Hassani will be sent to Tel Aviv. Interestingly enough, also the place where Dana International came from. She won the Song Festival in 1998.
A year before Bilal was born.
Exactly. And she was identifying herself as a transgender. So I think he will be welcomed very warmly in Tel Aviv this year. But we'll see what he will do, whether he will get 12 points. What do you think? How many points will you give?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe 10 at least. Sweden will announce their decision.
Who's going for? Oh, Sweden is not known yet.
No, it will take a little bit shorter than to get a government in the country, but it will take about a month's time because there's several competitions and semifinals, etc. So somewhere around beginning of March, there will be a finalist.
Well, we'll put the clip of Bilal Hassani on our website as well on sofrench.news.
Well, that wraps up this edition of So French. We hope you have enjoyed it. Please follow us on Twitter @SoFrenchNews, and you can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and even on YouTube.
Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, and please leave a review, because that way more people will find us. And if you happen to be in Paris, you can also listen to us on air on World Radio Paris.
And if you like French music, like Bilal Hassani, check out our free playlist on Spotify, which we update regularly. Just search for So French Music or click on the link on our website.
And we'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode of So French.
We hope you will join us then. Thank you for listening.
Au revoir.